There's so much information, but I think the most important thing is like it takes a lot of tenacity and resiliency and like to work with the system to get you, but it's really rewarding to get it and to get it at that interest rate. And I didn't know they did like 40-year term until like last week. I was like, what? You guys have 40-year term? I was like, that's pretty nice, like for a farmer to know, because then you could probably, have more expenses that if you needed and use for other farm stuff, you can. And I think starting up on a farm for the first 2 years is going to be your most your negative years, because you're using it to start up your farm, you're buying infrastructure, you're buying stuff. But then I think like after 2 years for any business, that's when you will like see your seeds of success. So I think like within the first 2 years of business, that's when we're telling you to collect information. But the reality is that this is your startup years. If you just started collecting data now and you're, having to buy a tractor, or you're having to buy BCS, and you're having to buy the poles, and you're having to buy, like you have all these expenses and you're already negative for the year. And then as farmers, you understand that like you don't make the money until May or June. So then like basically you're just kind of like capping everything, and then you're taking all your profits to like pay for that. And it could be, and so reserving enough into your savings and into your taxes and enough for your farm tools and equipment. And those equipment, you have to look at it. You can depreciate on your taxes, so like knowing that you can depreciate those rototillers and those tractors, or even your farm car that you use. And I think like it's so important to get a bookkeeper involved early on and educate you about that, and an accountant, because you're kind of mindlessly just doing it without knowing how to benefit from the system, and that your bookkeeping matches what you're reporting. So that way, per crop, like what your success is to. So I feel like, for example, one high tunnel, you could know like, oh, I measure everything that you plant, like just weigh it out. Worst case, if you can't track like what you're selling at the market, because it gets so busy and farmers don't do a good job of this, or at least I don't. Like sometimes you end up picking, you're like, oh, I forgot to weigh it. And then what's really nice is you can look at productivity of like one high tunnel generates me, let's say, 5,000 pounds of tomatoes. Well, that's a lot. And I sell all of it, well, that's $10,000 in profit per high tunnel. So then you can really look at your efficiency on like high tunnel success, right? So even though I'm spending this much on this upfront investment, like you have to look at in the long term, like the next 5 to 10 years, what is the benefit to you, So I think like not a lot of people have those conversations about like entrepreneurship or about this, the profit and loss, unless if you're going to like a Moses conference and you're sitting in there and you have people coming in with like spreadsheets. So for the simplicity of our people who are watching this with us and understanding is that like a really good business plan or a really good record keeping of what you're actually producing and selling. It could be as simple as just a sheet of paper saying what I sold this year, what I sold last year. So that way you could like see your seeds of returns. And then knowing that, okay, well, I spent 10,000, I divide that amongst like the 10 years that you have it. Well, what is your actual like benefit? I think those often aren't told to us, like the business planning aspect of high tunnel planning. And I feel like that's very important.
Yeah, and one thing you said before is like get a bookkeeper or an accountant. I'm sure there's more Hmong speaking accountants than there are Hmong speaking NRCS agents or FSA
right. And
agents.
Right? I had one where not only that, like they're also accountants don't know Schedule F. So I went to one the other day and like she's done some farming, but they're not going to know what goes on line item 10. I mean, like I probably know more than even the accountants, to be quite honest. Like I went in and I was correcting my accountant because I was like, well, under trucks and expenses, like for regular accounting, those are like auto expenses, right? But trucks and expenses, we have to put in like the underline item like 24A, you have to depreciate your trucks and stuff like that. So I was educating my accountant and my bookkeeper, you know what I mean? Like to make sure that they were categorizing incorrectly. But you're correct. Like there are probably a lot of accountants, but Schedule F is so unique. And that unless if you're going to the instructions and reading on what gets categorized what, and we host a very special session every year. And like, that's one thing that I could do better is maybe like reach out to the community members who are working with these farmers and educating them about the Schedule F, because Schedule F is very different from Schedule C. Schedule C is for like sole proprietor, and their what they can write off is very like they have some similarities, but like they can do meals and entertainment, and I believe Schedule F doesn't have that. But then there's also deductions on what you donate every year, right? So like I donate about 50,000 pounds of food, and that helps me, right? And so then like Second Harvest gives you a little sheet, and then you tally what you donate, and then you like, so that way you can record what you actually donated for the year. And so there's a donation box where that goes to, but like the regular accountants are going to be like, well, you know, what's the value to that? And you're like, I don't know, 10 bunches of beets times, you know, $2 a bunch, you know? So I think there's so many that like, yet even accountants that speak perfect English, I have not yet seen. And then even Schedule Fs are only for the American dairy or the mass producer farmers. So like, for example, like, you know, a lot of chemicals and fertilizers is like one area on there, or like propane is under utilities versus like gas and fuel and whatever. So as you're going through your taxes, it's so important that you know those categories and you do it correctly for bookkeeping and audit purposes too. And like, and when you go in and qualify, like, I remember one year we were doing NOP where like you do crop loss for the NRCS. That system is not friendly for small vegetable organic farmers like us. So they don't believe that we can make money, you know, like when they talk to me, they're like, oh, here goes the broke, you know, small hobby farmer trying to make a living, you know? So I think like it's really hard to even talk to NRCS or our government system about small organic farming, where you're like, they told me to like calculate what 0.0008 of eggplants of production that I was producing. And I was like, yeah, I was like, crap, like how, so I stopped doing the disaster relief thing. And then they're like, how many rows of cucumber did you plant? I was like, 4. So they're like, so how many acres is that? I was like, I don't know, divide like 4 feet by 36,540, because per acre there's 36,450 square feet, right? So as a realtor, I'm like, how do I calculate 3 rows of cucumber and do crop losses? And then they're like, well, then you should start measuring what you produce every single year from those 3 crops. So we know, so like, is it like 50 pounds? Is it 500 pounds? So if there's a crop loss, I can claim on it. So there's one year where hail whipped everything out. That's the one year I decided not to do crop loss. I probably would have only recovered like $500, but yeah, it was crazy. So yes, so not to mention, you know, Schedule F is not organic farmer friendly. Neither is the NRCS reporting system. So like they grow like 50 acres of corn that yields, let's say 50 ton, right? Well, you know, 1 high tunnel of like 7 rows of, you know, whatever, I yield, let's say, I don't know, like 700 pounds of, you know, like that's what they need me to do. And I'm like, well, I don't grow in that volume. So then they just lump everything into what we called mixed organic vegetables, right? And which is impossible to do because we grow so many different varieties. So yes, the system is not friendly altogether towards small mixed vegetables farmers.
These are just some of the other resources we have for farmers. So like it says there, you can call that number 888-90-MOSES or visit mosesorganic.org/ask, and you can talk to an organic specialist about farming and organic certification in English, Hmong, Spanish, Somali, and Swahili. And yeah, was there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I say just call us. Like after watching this, like any questions, when you call, just ask like in Hmong, like I'm looking for the free grant money high tunnel. That would be like the phrase. And then, or you can say I'm looking for a loan to buy land or buy, or operate my operational cost means operate my farm. And we could definitely get you to the right resources. So I think that would be the first step, is just a phone call. That's probably the easiest than to try to navigate this entire system by yourself.